Imagine being the son of a Hamas founder. You grew up in the inner circle of terror, spied for Israel, and had a death sentence on your head for decades.
I was born a Muslim myself. I studied Islam. I studied classic Arabic. I memorized huge portions of the Quran. I prayed to Allah 5 times a day. I was a devout Muslim. I was born in the mosque. I went to a Sharia school. I studied the Islamic law.
Yes, you know Islam better than the back of your own hand, but now you have to receive a lecture about the peacefulness of Islam from Piers Morgan, a loosely defined journalist notorious for hosting shouting matches and constantly interrupting his guests.
Hang on.
But Piers is obviously an expert on Islam.
But hang on, from everything I've heard from my moderate Muslim friends, of which I have many.
Yes, having a mate named Mohammed who likes football is the journalistic equivalence of a PhD in 7th century jurisprudence.
The vast majority of Muslims are peace-loving people who want nothing to do with this.
Okay, Piers, let's look at your minority. In Pakistan, Section 295C of the Penal Code makes insulting Muhammad a mandatory death sentence. But that's just a fringe group in a cave, right? That's why 1,000 Christian and Hindu girls are estimated to be kidnapped and forcibly married and converted to Islam annually in Pakistan. In 2023, 21 churches were burnt in Jarawala because of a blasphemy rumor. But that's just another TGIF in the Sharia utopia of Karachi. 82% of the world's Christians killed for their faith were slaughtered in northern Nigeria in 2024. That's 4,118 people in 1 year. In 2022, a Christian student in northern Nigeria was stoned to death and burnt to ashes by her fellow students who were Muslims. But that's clearly a fringe minority. In Afghanistan, apostasy is a death sentence. In Iran, 166 Christians were arrested for crimes against national security, which is Persian for having a Bible study. In Egypt, these minority Muslims have a hobby of kidnapping Coptic girls and attacking Coptic communities while the authorities look the other way. In Somalia, these minorities press Ctrl-Delete on any Christian they lay eyes on. Syria once had a 10% Christian population, now is barely 2%. In Iraq, the Christian population went from 1.5 million to just 150,000, but that's just the handiwork of this insignificant extremist minority. Even in a place like Qatar, where Piers went to watch the World Cup, homosexuality is a crime, as well as living Islam. In Saudi Arabia, it is still illegal to build a church or openly practice any religion other than Islam. But again, all of that is coming from a fringe minority, right?
The Quran, for example, it gets interpreted and spun deliberately to look like it's inciting violence by those who want to propagate violence. Social media is radicalizing people all over the place.
Piers, have you heard of Ibn Kathir, Al-Qutubi? These aren't extremist YouTubers from 2024. These are the giants of classic Islamic scholarship. And these guys have established that Surah 9 verse 5, which commands Muslims to slaughter unbelievers like flies wherever they see them, abrogates all the peaceful verses in the Quran. Surah 9 verse 29 established the legal framework for the status of the dhimmi. It commands Muslims to fight the Jews and Christians until they pay the jizya and feel subdued. Jalalain describes Surah 9 verse 111 as a contract where Muslims sell their lives to Allah in exchange for paradise, specifically through fighting in His cause, where they kill and are killed. In Sunan and Nasai 4059, Muhammad says, whoever changes his religion, kill him. But that's not a suggestion that a Muslim can ignore. Surah 4 verse 65 defines a Muslim as a person who follows the decision of Muhammad like a mindless zombie. But of course, 1400 years of Islamic history is best summarized as everyone who understands the text, including Muhammad himself,
twist the meaning of the text to suit their violent intent. It seems to me that the majority of Muslims in the US and the UK go about their lives integrated pretty well with the culture and society they live in and don't want to pursue acts of violence.
Of course, let's define Islam by what Piers observes among 10 million Muslims, less than 1% of the Muslim population who live in secular liberal democracies. Let's ignore the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 57 nations where Sharia isn't a scary word on the internet, it's the law. But then Mosab, instead of listening to Piers Morgan, the greatest English Islamic scholar scholar on the planet, he decided to drop this bombshell.
Meat eaters who identify as vegans. They are not vegans. And the Muslims who don't believe in jihad, basically they are not Muslims.
That's a brilliant analogy that summarizes Mosab's accurate view of moderate Muslims in the West. But brilliance is a crime on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Everything I've heard from my moderate Muslim friends, of which I have many, is that that is not how they interpret Islam.
Exactly. Islam is defined by the Muslim friends of Piers Morgan. Forget the Quran, the Hadiths, the commentaries, 1400 years of Islamic history, and the barbaric reality in the Muslim world. If it is not coming from a friend of Piers Morgan, then that's just internet misinformation or flagrant Islamophobia. Even Muhammad is just a bigoted online troll trying to stoke hatred against Muslims. In the end, Mosab, Hassan, Yousef is trying to save people by being honest, while Piers is trying to be polite by being willfully ignorant. But you can't reform a religion if you can't admit the truth about what it teaches and commands. And that's why a reformed Muslim is either a hypocrite or an apostate. And Piers Morgan is just another name on the laundry list of useful idiots for the religion of peace.